This is a wrap-up of the January 25th, 2021 City Council meeting. Although it was a short agenda, it was a very lengthy night meeting. We had a longer work session than normal. Normally we're done and starting the meeting at the regular meeting at 5, but we ran about a half hour over, but very interesting things during the work session. The first one is we learned about more detail about a pilot project that the community might be interested in. And the pilot project is by a group called May Mobility. They do autonomous vehicle public transportation. And so this is a project that the city didn't start out, wasn't something on our agenda that we were looking for, but they came to us. As far as we know, it's common, there's many companies in urban areas that do autonomous vehicle, and what that means is a driverless vehicle. Due to economies of scale, there's a lot of companies starting these up in urban areas, in big cities. As far as we know, we believe this is the only rural test project in the entire world, and they came to us in Grand Rapids. I know the IRRB is very interested in this, as is the Blandin Foundation and MnDOT. So they are working with Arrowhead Transport. They're not here to duplicate their services. They're here to complement and extend their services. And they are, over the course of 2021, working on figuring out costs and so forth, and the scope and research of the project. This would be operational in the spring of 2022. And over this year, though, there will be community info sessions to learn more about it. Well, I got extensive notes on this. I want to limit it a little bit, but they have a number of pilot projects going on in urban areas, this particular company, but starting this March, their first non-pilot program that will charge for rides is starting in Arlington, Texas. We had a couple members from the company here to tell us more about it via Zoom. But we also had one local member who's been instrumental in this, and that's Myrna Peterson. And she discussed how the Blandin Foundation surveys for the past 10 years have consistently, it comes up that transportation is an issue, especially in the evenings and weekends, because there's just not the economies of scale for Arrowhead or other companies to provide services. And there are services available, but a typical person maybe could go somewhere for $10, $20, but people with mobility issues, as Myrna noted, people with handicap and wheelchairs and so forth, just to go to church or an event of some sort costs $85 roughly. And so there are limited times that things are available after 4 o'clock on Sundays. Transportation only goes to certain places. For example, not the Rife at this point. So this would be a service that would be an extension of Arrowhead Transport. In fact, maybe they would be interested in purchasing the services if this works out. And this group works with many advocacy groups, including the National Federation of the Blind and Center for Independent Living. But this would offer opportunities for people with limited mobility to get to social events, worship services, medical transportation. And we do know that, that this organization will have, I forget what the term they use, I've got it here somewhere, but they will have people on board. It is an autonomous vehicle, but they will have, I think they call them fleet attendants on board as the pilot project goes, so people are comfortable with it and so forth. And so this would provide jobs for the community for a couple of years, some full-time people and some part-time fleet attendants. I think the number they gave us was 3 to 5 full-time, and I think it was somewhere between 10 and 15 part-time positions available. Anyway, there was a lot more to that, but I want to try to keep this a little bit short for now. But I know the cost to it is almost $2 million. We're looking at, or they are, I should say, they are looking at a MnDOT grant of almost $1 million. And the other part of it, they have already been looking at different agencies, including IRRB, who's very interested, the Blandon Foundation, the Northland Foundation, and of course the city and county. The cost of this for riders for the 18-month trial period would be free. And of course, if they decide to continue it in the community, or if somebody picks up the services, at that point, then they would have to charge. So that covered a lot of our work session, but then we also had another large item on our work session, and that's when we discussed a rental inspection ordinance. The city's been working on this for over 2 years. We've sent it back, the council has sent it back a few times to work on things, including this time the legal language. Tonight was a kind of a final return to the council of a proposed ordinance, at least the legal part of it. My guess is that it will be published in the paper for one of our next meetings, and it will come before the council, my guess is within the next meeting or two. That would not be the final part of it. We would still have to discuss other ordinances that it affects, and a fee schedule, and so forth. So Bemidji is the city that Grand Rapids has been using as the template. They've had this in place for quite a while, as has a number of cities on the Iron Range and nearby. The idea is not intended not to shut properties down. In fact, the intent is to make sure that they are safe and there's no safety issues, and that the city would work with the property owner to adequately fix the concerns to make it safe for residents. So it's been worked on for, like I say, this has been over a 2-year process, and it's getting close to fruition, and I expect to see stuff come back to the next few council meetings. At that time, about 5:30, we started the regular agenda and went right into a public hearing on construction of 5th Street Southwest. It would be on 5th Street, it's a 1-block section that we're looking at doing this summer, between 10th and 11th Avenue on 5th Street Southwest, so just that 1 block plus the alley. Currently, that is a gravel road, and it washes out during heavy rains. So the project would be to pave that, fix the alley up, storm sewer, and it would cost roughly $175,000. So it's a very small project. The assessments would be about 9% of the total cost. The rest would be picked up by GO bonds. And yeah, so that was our first construction project of 2021 as far as streets. During the consent agenda, which was the only other, which was the most of what the regular meeting was about, we accepted the resignation of Alice Morin from the Human Rights Commission and thanked her for her years of service on that. We approved a supplemental letter agreement with SEH on the Highway 2 lighting project. We're replacing 28 streetlights on US Highway 2 between 3rd Avenue Northwest and 12th Avenue Northwest. And that's part of an agreement we have with the state that we take care of that, and of course they help pay for that. Number of other items, but we also approved hiring 3 police vehicles that were part of the 2021 budget, and we approved the final purchase of those. We also approved the purchase of a Public Works Department budgeted item of a compact track loader. We bought it from ASV. It has a bucket, V-plow, and a backhoe attachment for the cemetery. And another number of other items, but the final consent item tonight was a very interesting one, and that is we approved a sponsorship agreement between the Grand Rapids State Bank and the City of Grand Rapids for naming rights of the IRA Civic Center. It will commence roughly when the roof is fixed after the 2022 summer. So probably January 1st, 2023, roughly. And it includes a significant payment per year for 15 years. And the original amount is $48,000, and it will go up with the Federal Reserve of Minneapolis's CPI number. So it will account for inflation. And that will help with the stability of the finances of the Civic Center, both to help pay back the cost of the roof and and the floor and the cooling systems, but then also a part of it will go towards future maintenance reserves for the building, which are much needed. So we thank the Grand Rapids State Bank for their willingness to have the naming rights for the IRA Civic Center. And then the final item for the evening was a department head report from Fire Chief Travis Cole. He had a very comprehensive report. We had 204 fire calls this year. Of course, we hired him full-time in March of 2020. He is both the fire chief and does works at the Building Safety Division with permits and inspections. Of course, he went through a number of the fires they had this year, including the VFW fire and the adjacent building that lasted for 21 hours shortly after he was hired on. And then he also discussed the building of the new fire hall. If you haven't been by that recently, walls have gone up very quickly. Precast walls, I think they finished it today. They were going to finish it last week, but the winds were kind of bad, as you may remember. So I believe they finished the precast walls went up. I know the steel started last week and today. Completion in June of 2021. So the address for that is 104 Southeast 11th Street, next to the car wash on the south end of town. So if you haven't had a chance to go by and see that, it's very interesting how quick it's going up. We also talked about the COVID-19 impacts and how that impacts the fire department and how they have to make sure that for their meetings and call-outs that they don't have everybody going out. So if somebody's infected, they aren't all quarantined. But he also talked about the positive things they did this year for COVID. You may be aware of birthday parades that they did this summer. Kids couldn't have birthday parties and large gatherings, so they went around town and provided birthday parades and also Santa parades. He also discussed the work and drills that they do, over 110 hours per year for every firefighter on drills every Tuesday of the year. And of course, we discussed the new fire engine that's we should be getting about a year from now in January or February of 2022. And I'm just looking at the numbers for the birthday wishes. They wished between 106 and 110 kids happy birthday with birthday parades this summer. So very cool, proactive thing they did during a tough time. So that's maybe a little longer report than we normally give, but a lot of things were happening tonight. And thank you. Our next meeting is February 8th, and we'll see you then.